It's 6:29. There's Rob.
You want to eat a little bit more pasta? Okay, a couple more bites.
Okay, still waiting for Marcia and Erin.
Yeah, I see a card for too.
Still waiting for Erin. There he is. Okay, so I'm seeing some phone numbers. I just want to make sure they can be ID'd. So the number ending in 669, can you just let us know who you are? The way to speak is to unmute yourself by *6. 669, number ending in 669.
You want a little piece of apple?
Okay, what about Wyoming 1? Who are you, please? Okay, so it hasn't come up for a while, but in the early era of Zoom, we sort of asked for this because we were always concerned about sort of Zoom bombers, right? Disrupting the term that is used for people who intentionally disrupt a meeting, right? And we had some of that at one point in one of our meetings, which is why I'm being extra concerned. So Wyoming 1, oh, that is Cedar. Hi, CATV. Hello, we're happy to have CATV here. Okay, thank you. Can you just rename yourself, because we want CATV at our meeting, obviously. Okay. And what about the 916 number ending in 916? Okay, so when we meet in person, we have the benefit of knowing who's in the room with us. So 916. You would push *6 to mute yourself. Go ahead, 916. Thank you. Hi. Can you just identify yourself for us?
Bonnie?
Bonnie. Great.
Bonnie Monday.
Okay. Hi, Bonnie. Thank you so much. Our town clerk, of course. So I'm just going to note that. Okay. And then 669. Okay. All right, I'm going to start our meeting in the interest of moving on.
Recording in progress.
Okay, welcome everyone. This is a Wednesday, October 26th. This is the regularly scheduled meeting. My name is Roger Arnold. I'm joined by Mary Layton and Rob Gear and Marcia Calloway and Erin Lamperti. This is a remote-only meeting. We also have Rod Francis with us and Miranda Bergmeyer. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, made by Mary, seconded by Erin. Discussion? Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, the next item on the agenda is board reorganization. And sorry, my kiddo is in the background, which in many ways is appropriate because about a month ago I had let this board know that in part, due to wanting to be more present for my family, I did need to take a step back from this leadership role. Really appreciate all the trust that you all had in having me be chair for this group. It's been a really deeply formative experience. I think it's also been just really quickly, really difficult. I think I've now worked with two town managers, right? Two very different town managers. And it is very difficult to form good relationships, on behalf of the community with these town managers and then see it not work out. And very simply, I cannot do it for a third time. I don't have the reservoirs in me to do that. So that being said, I really am thankful to whomever steps up in this, and they have my full support and empathy. So I'm going to actually have, so thank you for indulging me on that. I'm going to have Rod Francis is going to help us with this agenda item. He'll take over the chairing of this agenda item until a chair is elected. Rod, thank you. Can you help us out with this?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Hello. Thank you, Roger. So, yes, let me just explain what I think are going to be workable ground rules, and if people on the board have got suggestions for improvement or questions, then let me know before we proceed. So, basically, I'm going to invite nominations for two positions. The first position will be the chair's position, and the second position will be the vice chair's position. So I'll just simply ask for nominations, and then any of you can nominate either yourselves or somebody else. I'm not aware and shouldn't necessarily be aware of any a ticket forming or any other efforts on the part of you to figure out which one of you is going to step forward or be willing to be nominated. But so we'll just take it cold. So let me start. So let me just check in. So everyone's clear with the procedure here, what we're going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The one point that I need to make is that once we've received nominations for both positions, there'll be a vote where you'll indicate, who you'd like to fulfill each one of those roles. And then for the sake of the record, there'll subsequently be a motion. So you'll go through the voting exercise, and then hopefully there'll be a consistency between the motions that you move and the voting exercise that you engage in, so that once someone's been nominated and accepts the nomination, whether it's contested or not, then we move on at the end to making motions for both those positions. Is everyone clear on the process? Okay, so I call for nominations for the position of chair of the select board. Marsha, you're on mute.
Muted.
I'm going to propose that Mary be the chair, as she is currently the vice chair and has been chair in the past. I'm also going to propose that we strictly follow the guidance from the Secretary of State's office, so that the chair actually just runs the meetings and keeps order, and that the tasks that Roger has taken on in the past with the select boards.
So Marsha, I'm going to interrupt you there. I think that I'd like to say in my role here as the person overseeing this process that unless the rest of the group wants to indulge you in a discussion about the appropriate role of the chair, that maybe we can hold that off to a different point. So this is just simply determining nominations for the positions and then working through that process. If we're in a situation where we've got more than one viable nomination for one of the positions, perhaps then we can ask the competing nominees to express in 1 or 2 minutes what their view of the position is, or something such as that, so that the rest of the board can determine who they would like to vote for. But I think at this point, we just need to get the names down on the virtual piece of paper and move on.
Well, I preserve the right to discuss what the role under statute is for the chair.
Great. Okay. So you nominate Mary. So we have a nomination from Marsha Calloway for Mary Layton as chair. Any other nominations? Mary.
I'd like to nominate Marsha Calloway.
Okay. Anybody else making any nominations? Okay, seeing none. At this point, we now have two people nominated. And in fact, it's a sort of a process of cross-nomination. So the first thing I need to check is, are both nominees willing to serve in the role?
Yes.
Marsha?
Yeah, yes, but I'll be following the guidance of the Secretary of State.
Okay. Thanks for reminding us. So, okay. So now we need to vote. So as Mary was nominated first, I'll start with that. Okay. So which of you would like to see Mary Layton become chair of the select board? Please, with a show of hands, indicate your support for Mary Layton as chair of the select board. Okay. I'm asking Miranda to make sure that she's got those votes. So, okay. So for that, it was Marsha and Aaron. Okay. I'm now going to ask who would like to vote for Marsha Calloway as chair. Please, with a show of hands. Okay. I see 3 votes. So that indicates that there's a vote for nominating Marsha Calloway as chair. Anybody got any questions on the process right now? Seeing that there's no competition here, then we can set aside the discussion of the role of the position, and then Marsha's also made her stance clear. So we can formalize this now. Is there a motion to name Marsha Calloway as select board chair? Somebody like to move that?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. Mary Layton moves.
I move to name Marsha Calloway as select board chair.
Okay, seconded. Okay. And once again, for the sake of the record, the vote, it's going to be a roll call. Roger, how do you vote?
Yes.
Marsha, Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Marsha, how do you vote?
Abstain.
And Aaron, how do you vote?
I'll vote yes.
Great. Okay. All right. All right. So now we have a chair, and I'm going to hand it over to Marsha to conduct the nomination process for the vice chair.
So do we have any nominations for the position of vice chair for the board? Mary?
I'd like to nominate myself.
Any other nominations? Any discussion? Shall we call the vote?
Sounds good to me.
Can we please see a roll call for all of those who would vote for Mary Layton to be vice chair of the select board?
Do you want to name people one by one? That's the roll call method.
Roll call, yep. Mary?
I vote yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Robert?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Marsha, yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, everyone. I think my role here at this point is done. So
I'm sorry, Miranda's waving her hand.
okay.
So I didn't get a motion out of that?
That's true.
Okay, thanks.
Is there a
Well,
motion?
there was not a motion, actually.
Is there a motion to nominate? No, sorry, to,
Name.
Is there a motion to name?
is there a motion to name Mary Layton as vice chair of the Norwich Select Board?
So moved.
Rob has moved. Any second?
I'll second it.
Mary seconds it.
Should we take
Once
the vote
again?
again?
Once again, Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Roger,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Marcia, yes. Unanimous.
Thank you, Miranda.
Okay. We're talking about board reorganization. And so I'm wondering, I think when Roger was chair of the board, he was doing a lot of things, including compiling the agenda topics, controlling the Zoom sessions, liaison with whoever needed to be liaisoned with, signing warrants, etc. So I'd like to find out if there is any interest in dividing up those tasks so that the whole of the board is more involved in what's going on. Specifically, I'm wondering, is there any interest in dividing up the remaining months of this year before the March election so that one board member takes 1 month to do each agenda for that month? Is there any interest in that?
I'm not sure how it would work.
Well, I was thinking I could take November, Rob could take December, Aaron could take January, Mary could take February, and then by then we'd have a new election, a new chair, a new board. Roger?
I mean, I think mercifully the agendas are clear because we're entering budget season. And so I think if anything that there could be a work schedule that will need to be developed around that. And so I think we will naturally be seeing ourselves divide and conquer as a consequence of not having management and the need to do so. So I would say that I would defer to the chair for a series of asks, for that work schedule.
Then I will be asking. Thank you. I'm wondering about controlling of Zoom sessions. Rob, you seem a natural for that sort of thing. Would you be interested in taking over that responsibility?
Yes, I can try that.
Okay, thank you. And then signing of warrants. We haven't all been signing the warrants for a while, and I'd like to go back to that. So does anyone have any objection to that?
I don't have an objection, but I'm just wondering, as a procedure, when we have the reorganization meeting in March, is that when we establish that the chair and the vice chair should sign the payroll warrants or sign the AP warrant in the absence of the full board? And do we need to affirm that again or not? That's a question.
I think we haven't been signing the AP warrants, and so I think that would be a good thing. At least I haven't been seeing them regularly at all for signatures. Roger?
Well, we learned that you have a very intense spam filter, although you've checked that. I know. I mean, I think the payroll warrants that we have an authorization from March that it's just the chair
Okay.
or the vice chair has the ability to sign these payroll warrants. And so I think there's a little bit of a hint from that in some ways, like,
It's probably okay then.
you can maybe divide the tasks between the chair and the vice chair for
Sure.
these payrolls if you'd like, or have you both do it. it's a matter of setting up the DocuSign. But
Okay.
in terms of the other payrolls, I don't have the same recollection when we get the DocuSign after for the AP warrant, to my knowledge.
We used to. That's how I remember it, but I'll think about that. But Mary, I think the two of us
Well,
signing things would be good.
Yeah, we'll work together on it, Marcia.
Okay. All right. I see. Is there any more comment on this on the board reorganization from the board? No. I see John Cushman's hand up.
Are you
John?
going up to, is that about this or about public participation?
I'm going to add
public
this.
participation.
Oh, okay. Then if we are finished with the board reorganization, we can move to the public participation. Board okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. So John, you're first up.
Thank you very much. I just want to say that at this moment in our town's processes, I feel that it's important to seek consensus. And that consensus involves parties on different sides of discussions to attempt to move to a middle ground, which is suitable for everybody. And there are many issues. I won't go into them in detail, but you know what they are, where there are disputing views. I would urge everybody who is engaged in a dispute about town processes to drop the dispute and to attempt to make common ground, which is our tradition in New England. And that means that if you are in litigation with the town government, you should drop your litigation. And that means that if you are proposing an overhaul of our systems, that you should seek consensus among our citizens about how our process should work. We can get together and form a common purpose for the town. I say this as somebody who is not interested in being involved in town government. I'm part of the silent majority in Norwich who want us to get together and do what's right for the town in civil discourse. And that's all I have to say about it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We appreciate that. I think Liz Bloom was next.
Oh, I second what you said, Jack. Thank you very much for that comment. On behalf of myself and many other Norwich residents, I would like to thank Rod for the wonderful job he's done and tell him how much we'll miss him. I think Rod is one of the most competent town managers we have ever had, and he has worked under very difficult conditions, and I wish you good luck in the future. Thank you, Rod.
Thank you, Liz.
Thanks, Liz.
Lily Trayman, I think you're next.
Hi, Lily Tryman, 236 Main Street. I hope you can hear me because I'm driving at the moment, or rather Omer is driving. I just wanted to say that I really hope that you might consider bringing in-person meetings back prior to the state deadline in January, as every other board and group that I know of is back to meeting in person. And I think we're missing a little bit of the town civility because we're so disconnected on Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily. Any other public comments tonight?
Bonnie has her hand up for a while. Sorry.
Bonnie, do you have a public comment? Bonnie Mundy?
Star 9, Bonnie. Or star 6. Go ahead.
Marcia, no, my hand, the wave has been up since the beginning because I hit star 9 at first by accident. So
Okay.
you can mute me back out. I don't have anything further to say.
Thank you, Bonnie. Peter Orner, I think you're next.
Oh.
Thank you, Marcia. I just want to make a comment about the Moore Lane Bridge, maybe not surprisingly, and ask the board to reconsider the decision you all made 2 weeks ago. And my reasons are as follows. One is I think we still have some serious public health questions that have not been answered. And with all respect, I think we need public health experts weighing in. Number two, the tests that were done and commissioned by the town were a snapshot in time. They were one day. If they were taken on a different day, the chemicals would have been not only shown up differently, but been visible, as they often are to me because I live near the bridge. And number three, costs. I think we are unclear still at this point about how much this containment structure will end up costing the town and whether or not this is a prudent financial decision. $62,000 for the containment structure, $10,000 already for the plastic sheeting. I think $15,000 or so for the test. I might be wrong about that. So we're looking at upwards of $100,000 as it is. And how much is it going to cost to dismantle this when the time comes? Because as you all indicated, this is a temporary measure. So I just appreciate you revisiting that because I think that when you all made the decision, I'm not sure all the facts were on the table. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Peter. Jan Lansfield, I think you're next.
Yes, hello. 95 Upper Pasture Road. It's Jan Lasbra. I just wanted to make a quick practical suggestion around meeting agendas and timing of the executive portion of the meetings. And say from the point of view of people, and obviously we have quite a few people that are attending these meetings, that when the executive sessions are sandwiched right in the middle of the meeting and there are topics after executive session of interest to attendees, like the correspondence that comes after, it would be very much appreciated if, when at all possible, to have executive sessions as the last agenda item, and then people would be able to attend. And when you dropped off into executive session, the public could drop off as well. So just a practical suggestion that I think would go a long way in helping people participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Arlene Rotman, I think you're next.
I think I unmuted myself.
You did.
Yes, you did.
I wasn't really planning to speak, but I feel compelled to now. I have, as chair of the Development Review Board, I have had the privilege of working with Rod Francis. He is by far one of the most competent public servants and untiring public servants that I've ever had the privilege of having a relationship with him and having him guide us. I'm sorry to say I'm ashamed of this town. We have some wonderful people here, and we have this criticism, this nothing is good enough, everything is bad, which has fractured the town. And given the state of the polarization of our national politics, I hate to see this happening in the town of Norwich. So I would just join everybody who says if you can work out some kind of consensus and leave all that antagonism behind. Many of us would be very grateful because Norwich is a wonderful place to live, but right now it is very troublesome. And I just hope that there will be an outpouring of appreciation for Rod, because he has worked really, really hard and very professionally in a terrible political climate. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene. Stuart Richards, I think you're next.
Stuart Richards, 82 Elm Street.
I'd like to second what Lily said earlier and also what Peter has said. I think it's important that we meet in person and that we do it face to face. And I also think that the town ought to revisit what it has said about the bridge and the willingness to spend $62,000 or whatever the number is on a bridge that really needs to be replaced. And putting a Band-Aid on it now is a mistake, in my opinion. I also want to comment on the press release that was released on October 24. It says that the Select Board respectfully finds that there has been an unwarranted level of negative public sentiment and scrutiny on the part of some. I think that comment really misses the point. The reason that there's been any scrutiny and a sense of trying to reverse the non-transparency that has existed on this board previously is that it was necessary actually to file public records requests. And I'm sorry that I had to spend a bunch of money to do that. I'm hoping that in the future, this board will be more transparent and that you will be open to the public in a way that you have not been open previously. So, and as far as the departure of Mr. Francis, there are a lot of past and present employees who feel a lot differently than what has been expressed by a couple of people who made public comments. So, and I sincerely hope that we get beyond this troublesome time and that we do reach some kind of a consensus on some of the issues that face us. So thanks very much for hearing me out, and have a great meeting.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Leslie Wells.
Hi, it's actually Marshall Heinberg with Leslie at 207 Willie Hill Road. The comment I just want to make, which is somewhat akin to what Stuart just said, we are relatively new to the community, and I have to say from observations, Rod seems like and I've never met him, but he seems like a very competent and effective communicator, and I've enjoyed listening to him on these meetings. But there has been an enormous void of information on issues which, there's been an outcrying of requests for explanations. And I think, on its face, it was true that we lost all but one member of our police department and a substantial number of our DPW employees. And that causes anxiety and concern. And, consistently, people have asked for explanations and understanding of what the plans would be. And I appreciate, as a former attorney, that there are things you can't share, but you only increased anxiety by stonewalling. And so I think in person would help. I think sharing more information or at least addressing those concerns would help going forward. And obviously all of us would like to have a conciliatory tone and find a middle ground, but it is hard when you feel like you're stonewalled. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Marshall. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that wants to speak tonight? I'm not seeing anyone. Oh, no. Linda Cook. *9 is what I remember Roger always saying.
All right, it's actually *6 because I misspoke just earlier. So,
Now
sorry.
you can hear me.
Yes.
I forgot to unmute. I'd just like to say I think I've learned of new information. I think more new information will be coming out on the bridge. How it was designed and built with the assistance of the state, and I'd like to see that conversation come out and possibly the plan to find out if what was being done that was something new, did it fail, and is there, I don't know what kind of grant paid for it, is there any assistance from the state that might help us with that project? I wonder if we could look into that.
Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
Are you saying, Linda, that you have information that you want to share with the board?
I do, but I don't have it in my hands yet.
Okay.
So I'd like to speak factually, and we could not get it by this meeting.
Okay. We'll look forward to that then. Susan Barrett.
Hi, this is Susan Barrett. I'm on 1592 New Boston Road here in Norwich. And I am sorry, I'm a little late at work and just coming into the meeting, but I just wanted to just generally say, thank you to all of the select board members. Thank you to all of our staff. I work for the state of Vermont, so I consider myself a public servant, and I know how hard your jobs are, and I know it's difficult to try to get information out to folks the way they want it, when they want it. And I think when I just joined, somebody was saying, sometimes there's legal issues and you can't share information that is either HR confidential or related to personnel or other matters. So I just wanted to say that, number one. And number two, how can we help as citizens of Norwich? I have looked at the subcommittees you have, and I think I can step up and get more involved and lend a helping hand where I can. But I think I want to put that out to all of you publicly and to my fellow Norwich residents that I appreciate what all of you have done. And to Rod also, thank you for serving. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan. We'll look forward to seeing your name put forward. Are there any other comments? Okay, I think the good news tonight is that everybody, I think, has almost the same feeling. Everyone wants the best for Norwich. Obviously, people feel that there are different ways of getting to that place. And I think we have to respect every single person's opinion, and we will be a better community if we just learn to hear each other. So.
Well said, Marcia.
Thank you. All right, so shall we move on to number 5, the Townwide Reappraisal RFP. Rod has put into the packet a revised draft for the RFP. And I think, first of all, we can let him explain what he's thinking with this, and then we can have some discussion and potentially some motions. Go ahead, Rod.
Thank you, Marcia. So, board, what you have before you is a memo summarizing the changes that I made to the draft RFP prepared by the listers at an earlier point that I think they circulated in the middle to late September. And it itself is based on a template that many other towns in the state have used to obtain townwide reappraisal proposals from contractors. And I'm suggesting some minor changes, and then I circulated it to the listers under a lot of time pressure at the same time that I was putting the packet together, and they have helpfully provided a couple of suggested edits. But basically, the purpose of the reappraisal is to, first of all, acknowledge that there is a huge time crunch. There needs to be something communicated to the state by December the 9th. And that's a plan that's required under the program that we work with the state. So that the plan has to show that the town is under contract with a contractor to do a townwide reappraisal, and obviously show the date that work is going to be done. So I know that we've talked before in fairly loose and abstract terms about the chicken and the egg problem of, do you choose the software first and then the contractor, or do you choose the contractor and then get whatever software they use, or how do you unravel, or how do you flatten this ball out? What I'd say is that if the listers are comfortable with Assess Pro, which is the software that they're using now, and they are looking for vendors who can, or contractors who can work in the Assess Pro software environment, that works fine. The one modification I made to their RFP, which you see before you in my version, is the possibility that because of the time constraints, and because, as far as I can understand it now, other towns, when they've approached, when they've gone out to bid to get a contractor to do a townwide reappraisal, they are booking 2027 and the back end of 2027. And the expectation is that this process lasts for more than a year. So we have 5 years from now to put a plan in place and to start doing it, which gives you 2027. So there'd be this like struggle at the end, and then that's not taking into account the annual effects of the current situation. But realistically, a lot of towns need to do a reappraisal as a consequence of COVID and the real estate market movements that took place, and there are a finite number of potential vendors, and there's an approved list that the state works with, and they're scheduling in 2027 already, and we're a little bit late to that party. The idea of saying that if there was a vendor that had a different software platform that they were using, and then they were willing to demonstrate it to the listers and the committee put together to review the RFP, the proposals that the town receives, would be that they might be able to start sooner. And there might also be potentially a price advantage if they're willing, if they're using a different form of software. And so if somebody was wanting to submit a proposal to Norwich, they would have to demonstrate their software platform to the review team that's going to review all the proposals prior to submitting the proposal, or as part of this proposal submitting process. It would be that would be the other way of doing it. And so it would just potentially increase the number of potential respondents. I don't think by a significant amount. I think Assess Pro is pretty popular, and I think that everyone's busy. But it's kind of a long shot, but it's worth contemplating. So it's one of the key changes. And then the only other thing that I think I probably want to draw attention to is in my memo. The part that I'm most concerned about is that in the draft provided by the listers, they had language that suggested that they would negotiate with a respondent in the proposal process. And that raises some process red flags for me. I think it would be much better to not have language like that, and to make it really clear to all respondents that they're all their materials are considered on equal footing, that they're asked the same questions and they provide the appropriate answers, and then the panel reviews the answers to those standard questions. And then if you're going to go forward with offering a contract to one of the respondents, that would be the appropriate time to negotiate, not in the midst of the proposal process, because then you're not in the situation where you're communicating with all the respondents saying, we're negotiating with Team Y about start dates or prices or what they're going to provide. You'd have to do that to ensure that each one of the respondents is being dealt with the same way. It's generally regarded as inappropriate to try and do a deal before you've resolved who you're going to give the contract to. So that would be the major difference. Insofar as you've received from the listers a marked up version of the PDF, I would provided them with a Word document so that they could use track changes, but looks like they didn't do that. My numbers came from the state webpage in terms of the number of parcels that are under current use and use that to calculate the total area of land that is subject to current use. I don't have a problem with using their numbers, but I would need to know where they're from. The reason I included the fact that there's 5 zoning districts and that 97% of the land area is one zoning district is that it helps characterize the nature of Norwich for a potential respondent. And that information comes from GIS analysis that was contained in the last town plan. I've explained to you the whole idea of trying to broaden the pool or increase the pool for potential respondents by saying, if you want to demonstrate your software, if it's not Assess Pro, then make a time and we'll do it. And then on page 2, they asked a question about why it was relevant to use material from the previous appraisal or make available to the respondents. The 2016 reappraisal on that is simply for context and for comparison to current circumstances, and so to allow the respondents to get a better understanding of how things work in Norwich. And then I think that there's some other smaller details, but I don't think there's really a big issue with any of those. They caught a date issue. I think they're suggesting that it should be November the 28th, the week after Thanksgiving. That's okay, I guess. And then that's about it. So yeah, I'm happy to take any questions if you've got them.
You're mute, Marcia.
I do have questions, but I'll defer to the board first. Who would like to ask a question first? Roger?
I don't have a question. I have a comment if you're taking comments.
Comments, questions?
Okay. No, thank you. You know, the last RFP released was an arcane 10-page document. And so this is really has the benefit of good formatting and clarity, and it's a self-effacing document. And so I really appreciate that on an administrative level. And then I also appreciate how we've worked into the software question, right? So I think that's good. And I think, you know, just in general, we've had the benefit whenever we have an RFP or document from Rod, we've had the benefit of a very helpful oriented and a memo that orients us into the work. And so it's just one of the many losses. And so I thank you for this work. I'm prepared to move it as is.
Anyone else? Aaron? Aaron?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I pretty much just want to echo what Roger says. I think this is I would appreciate the guidance that the memo gave, and I think what you've put together in terms of the computer question is appropriate, and also the question of negotiating before the selection is made is appropriate also. Thank you, and I'm ready to also vote for it.
Rob or Mary? Any comments, questions? Mary?
I appreciate the thought that went into this. I appreciate the clarity. I think it's a good plan, and I will plan to support it.
Rob?
Same. It's the previous document was clear as mud. This one just is much more understandable.
Thank you. So my concern is that, you know, all elected officials are equals, the select board, and the listers, this is kind of their domain. So Rod, you've done a lot of work on this, but I'm just wondering, you know, it seems like it's pushing it into the select board domain more than the lister domain, which gives me a little bit of pause. To the extent that we have Norwich RFPs, I think it's good that those have some consistency in form. But your comment about due process, of course, pricked up my ears, because in fact, I think the process that you're putting together or suggesting here with a board is different as far as I know, from any other kind of RFP process that we have in Norwich. And if you're looking for a due process problem, I would think that might present one. So apart from the fact that we've got this structure that you've suggested that seems different from other types of RFPs, I'm kind of worried, very worried about how much time all of this will take and whether we'll be able to meet the deadline of December 9th. So to that extent, I think it's important that we hear from one of the listers, if one is here to speak to this. Do we have a lister?
We do. And by the way, I'm still doing all of the Zoom stuff. So let's note that for future. So everyone's instructing here and there, but I'm still doing it. So FYI.
Thank you. Cheryl, are you willing to speak to this?
Yes, Cheryl Lindbergh, Board of Listers. We put our draft RFP out to the board long ago to get comments and help, and would have been glad to sit down with Rod at any point in time to review our draft, but that never happened. And our twice presenting it to the board, we never heard back. Would have loved to have sat down and understood from Rod what his suggestions were and comments, but again, we went forward with an RFP that we took from the website of the Vermont Assessors and Listers Association, which is a resource for all assessors and listers in the state of Vermont, and felt we came to a point with a new RFP that was much shorter and to the point than probably the prior one was way back when KRT bid on it, and the select board rejected that response to do the reappraisal from that company approved by the state of Vermont. So it's disappointing in some of those ways to get to this meeting and now have an email come to us as the Board of Listers to ask or to tell us what we're going to do with this process. Again, would have liked to have had a chance to go over dates and some of the points ahead of time. That's why when I got back in town and Pam and I had a minute to go over this, we did it. We did it as quickly as we could to provide feedback to the select board. And we think it's important feedback to go into this RFP, that we should be up to date with our numbers, use 2022 numbers. We had questions about certain things. Rod's responded to those. That's helpful now to understand that. Thank you. Our numbers come from our 411 that was lodged in June with the state of Vermont. That's where our numbers come from. So I think we're pretty solid on that information.
So Cheryl,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but can you tell me, looking at the draft that Rod has presented, can you accomplish what you need to accomplish by December 9th?
I would say to you that yes, as long as the select board is willing to have a special meeting to address a recommendation we be making, because the timing is tight. So depending on the select board meeting schedule, but now with the, Pam's and my schedule and this getting pushed back further and further, November 28th, if you look at the select board calendar, I'm not sure there's a meeting scheduled before the 9th of December, the date we need to file our document with the state. So it may be requiring a special select board meeting to work with us to select a contractor, a reappraisal firm.
So if we had a special meeting in the first part of November, would that?
December.
No, the first part of November. You said a special meeting. I'm worried about getting you prepared for December 9th, whatever you have to do. So when does the board have to meet in order for you to get ready?
Well, if this document can move forward with our edits, we have a date of November 28th as when all the responses need to be received by 2 p.m. We're going to need to review those responses and will then make a recommendation to the select board as to who we feel is the right reappraisal firm.
Marcia, I don't necessarily, if I may interrupt, I don't necessarily agree with that being the process. So I also, can you can you remind us of the plot? Like what was your original question, Marcia?
The question was, looking at what Rod had proposed, could the listers accomplish what they needed to accomplish by December 9th, the deadline?
Okay.
And my response is that yes, we can, if there's a special meeting of the select board to review our recommendation for the reappraisal firm.
And you're saying, Cheryl, that special meeting would have to be after December 28th and before, November 28th and before December 9th.
Right.
Okay, may I make a comment?
Roger? Yeah.
So I think what we've discussed previously when we were trying to establish this agenda, and also when we and the document itself, there are other consequences. There are other individuals who need to be consulted in this process, including the assessor and the board, and that the software has more consequences to town operations than just the listers, right? And so so I think we probably, as a process question, should really look to see if we approve the RFP content, and then we really should move on to the other part of the proposal, which is just who reviews this and at what schedule. And so to that end, Marcia, if you could maybe ask our lister what the numbers were from. So if we were to look to amend this document, what we would be amending information with.
Feel free to. You've asked the question. Cheryl?
Okay.
Is Roger's question, Marcia, that the numbers that we've entered onto our edited document?
Yes. What is the source of those numbers? Because we would need to motion.
The form 411 that we lodged with the state of Vermont in June of this year, early July of this year. It's our most recent grand list data.
Okay, so a potential motion would be to approve the RFP with the numbers with the form 411, perhaps. Okay, thank you.
I would also like to add, Marcia, that the CAMA software is used for assessment purposes. Once the data is entered, and it's done with the reappraisal firm and maintained by the listers and an assessor that we have hired, which is a contract assessor. Excuse me? I'm sorry.
I was just clarifying that the town hires the assessor, and that the contract of the assessor is with the town of Norwich.
We have a contract you could read at some point, if you'd like to, that is signed by the then chair of the board and the chair of the listers when the contract was signed, and the contract is clear as to who the contract assessor reports to. So I can tell you, I can stand behind that statement. With that said, we have spent a lot of time with our contract assessor discussing CAMA software. It's not the listers alone that have recommended that we go forward with what we're talking about. We have spent time with Spencer going over at least 3 of the software, CAMA software. Once it's in the CAMA software, then others use that software from the website of the town. There isn't another office that puts data into that software or does anything to maintain it. It's done solely by the lister's office. So I want to make that clear, that this CAMA software is for assessment. It is not then getting used by other departments in the town of Norwich, except as a database through a portal. So I've got to get that message clear. It's important.
Cheryl, is that a view-only kind of access that other offices have?
Yes, they go to the town website, and there is the database from Patriot Properties that individuals or town individuals can access to get data from it, but they're not doing any modifications or putting any data into the CAMA software. It's solely used in the lister's office.
I think we established that other offices use the software.
They use the grand list module is what they use for other purposes. It is not the CAMA software.
Okay. So I'm looking at your notes, Cheryl, and on the first page of the request for proposals, you've got a question under the highlighted responses to the RFP may propose a different CAMA program, but would have the obligation of demonstrating any alternative CAMA software prior to the submittal date for the RFP. And you have problems with that.
Well, we brought it up. Like, who is this getting demonstrated to, and how is this possible with the timeline we're now facing? So later on in the proposal where Rod edited some things, I noticed that he then identified it as the Board of Listers. So that was helpful. But when I first started on that page, I didn't have that reference. So that's why it was being asked. But you know, we're very familiar at this point with the options that are out there for CAMA software. It's not something we have taken lightly. So we're good with moving forward and letting others propose their software. But it's not their software. It's a CAMA software that somebody uses to do their reappraisal work. So it's not their software. It's somebody else's software that the reappraisal firm is using.
Okay.
I'm ready to make a motion unless you want to call on Rod and Neil Fulton.
Aaron Lamperti wants to make a comment or a question.
I'm just going to basically say, is there anything of substance here that's going to modify the proposal? I think we've over 20 minutes over time already, and we should move on.
Thank you for timekeeping, Aaron. I think this is really important, and we've been delaying this since.
I'm asking the question if there is anything of substance that's actually going to delay it further, or are we going to move on?
I'm wondering, my question of substance is about the group that's going to be reviewing stuff. Is that?
I think the next thing that's the next thing we're going to talk about after we end the RFP, if I understand the process.
I can put a motion on the table, Marcia, if that helps.
Go ahead.
So I moved to accept and have the town manager's office release the RFP following amendments to the numbers that come from the form 411. How's that?
I second.
Okay. And now more discussion,
please.
Cheryl.
So it's in this will be released RFP. That's what's stated in here. The listers will be sending it out. So we plan to do that Friday.
It wasn't my motion.
If we get to an agreeable, well, I think it's the responsibility of the listers, Madam Chair, that we do this. And I am very disappointed in the interactions that are taking place right now as other elected officials in a co-equal form of government.
I'm wondering why is it necessary for the town manager's office to send this out as opposed to the listers? Rod, can you answer that?
It's customary for the town manager's office to release RFPs, and we have a process for doing that. If we have access to the list of approved vendors for doing townwide reappraisals in Vermont, I'm happy to have our office coordinate with the lister's office to make sure that we get as comprehensive a release as possible to all the possible vendors. So it goes on the town webpage. Typically, it's a town manager's office that posts things to the town webpage. We have various generic vendor sites that we push RFPs to, including VLCT and so forth. So we have a mechanism for doing it, and we control that process so that if there are questions of process from potential respondents or actual respondents about how we did it and when we did it, we can comprehensively answer those questions. And so that is the reason why the town manager's office usually does it. But in this instance, in the interest of expediency and working with the listers, we're happy to work on getting it out.
We did that last time, Marcia. We sent the last RFP out to all the list of the appraisal firms that the state of Vermont has approved.
Right. And I think
posted it, did all that.
Right. Just to finish off my thought there before I was interrupted. I think it's key here, Marcia, you asked a different due process question of me and then recognized Cheryl. So I think the other question that I want to answer that you were posed earlier on in the discussion is in terms of due process in a different way. It's not the case that all RFPs are reviewed by the town manager and the decision is made by the town manager. It's sort of a subject area by subject area issue. There have been plenty of instances where RFPs are reviewed by a panel of people, sometimes including the public. And the RFPs for the IT work, for instance, were done that way. It was made up of a panel of staff, select board members, Rob Gear in particular, and then members of the public who had expertise and a background in the field. So there are times when we put together panels to review RFPs. This is one of those. It's important to have the listers, the assessor, and the other people that we identified in the RFP as part of the review process. And as Aaron just pointed out, we're going to move to that topic in a moment. But in terms of another question of due process, it's of concern to me that the payment for the services encumbers the town, encumbers the town directly. It doesn't. It's not a lister's liability. It's a town of Norwich liability. The due process question is a town of Norwich liability. If there's a vendor that feels aggrieved or takes issue with the way the RFP process is done, they take action against the town of Norwich. They don't take action against the listers. And so that's a reason why the town manager's office is the one that's responsible for doing it. And that's a key process question, and it's a vulnerability that the town needs to understand. And that's why I'm proposing the process that I'm proposing. And that's why RFPs have been done this way since I've been town manager.
Well, I think I'd like Roger to repeat the motion. Or
yes, I will try my best. So I believe I approved, my motion was to approve and to authorize the town manager's office to release the RFP following amendments consistent with Form 411, which I'm trusting is a true form. Thank you, Cheryl.
And somebody, was it Mary, seconded that?
Yes.
Okay. And we do have a couple of people who want to comment. Can we have some quick public comments before we vote? Neil Fulton. Neil Fulton.
I was involved as a private citizen with the listers when I did the reappraisal use, which ended up with
Neil, we're having difficulty hearing you. At least I am.
I was involved with the writing of the RFP where CESPRO was chosen, and it's a good program. And if it is the intent of the select board of the board of listers to consider other programs, to be fair to the potential proposers, seems to me the criteria that a competing product would be reviewed and ought to be part of the RFP, which was what was done when the CESPRO was chosen.
I'm sorry, I really didn't catch that. Did anyone else?
No.
I think Neil, if I may, I think Neil was saying that if you were to evaluate the software, it should come as a separate process, and it would be like most fair. But and then if I may editorialize, I think we're not doing it that way in part because of time.
Yeah, Roger, I think that's a good point. So one of the things to do is just say it's going to be a CESPRO, which is, I think, what the listers recommended. And they are a separate elected body, and the grant list is their responsibility. I think Cheryl makes a good point of that. So my comment was, if in fact you're serious about having a proposal for a different camera product, the criteria for the evaluation of that ought to be included in the RFP.
And it is. So, right. So yes, thank you. Right. Marcia, everyone.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Pam Smith, do you have a comment? Question?
Yes, Pam. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Pam Smith. I'm also a lister. I would like to echo Cheryl's earlier comment that I too am disappointed with the way the conversation has been going. There's a lot of disrespectful behavior tonight, and that was the point of our meeting with Mary last week. Talking over the chair, demanding that motions be made. It's unacceptable, and it needs to stop. The listers are responsible for this, and there won't be a town manager on November 28th. So I don't know why this is going through the town manager's office. That makes no sense to me. So I'd like to go back to the process that we used last year when Herb was the town manager. The listers issued the RFP. They reviewed the proposals that came in. We interviewed the firms, and then we made a recommendation. And that's my preference, is how we proceed with this. Thank you.
Marcia, the document still has the chair of the board of listers receiving them. Like that's in
the chair didn't recognize you, Roger.
I'm just
the chair did not recognize you.
All right, I understand. We're in the period of transition. We're in a period of obvious conflict, and this is a difficult time. And I think we all need to try to come together. No one need take any proprietary feelings about this. We have got to get this done. And at this stage, I personally, not speaking as chair, but I would like to do the most expedient thing possible so that we move forward with this reappraisal easily. And Pam makes a good point. The position of the town manager is going to be vacant. I think if this is sent out through the town manager's office, there needs to be absolute collaboration with the lister's office, and they have to be given the due deference that listers as elected officials are supposed to have. So, Stuart, last comment from you, please.
Stuart Richards, 82 Elm Street. I don't know why this discussion is ongoing. The listers have been doing this for years and years and years. They know the software, they've used it, it's good software, not only according to the listers, but according to the paid professional that helps them. So I don't understand why the listers are not going to follow through on this, and why there is an interjection, which is what it really is, by the town manager or anybody else. I mean, none of the other folks really are listers. They haven't done this job. So I would like to see, just as a public person, I would like to see the listers go forward, use the software that they've used in the past, that they like, that they're used to, that works well with the assessor, the town's assessor, and that ought to be the end of it. And I don't know why there's so much discussion about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. So I will call, we have one more person, Susan Barrett.
Just a very thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a quick question, and maybe it can be a follow-up, probably can't be addressed right now, but what do other towns do? Is this do we do the same practice as other towns? I guess I could look that up on my own, but
might not be that easy.
Okay.
Cheryl, if you can just say we do it differently or not, just quickly.
Every town in Vermont is different, right? But I love our own individual identities. But what we've tried to do is follow what property valuation and review, our bosses for this process, encourage us to do and tell us to do. And we've reached out to them as the listers. We spend time talking with our district advisor. We've asked her to review our RFP. She gave us her feedback, and everything was fine, except she didn't like having informal grievances. And so we've worked through making that a different process. But Otherwise, our district advisor did not have other comments. We would love to collaborate with Rod to get this out, but we just felt it was helpful for us to send it from the lister's email address so that it comes from us, it gets responded to us at the lister email. So I would tell you other towns do it this way, the way we're doing it, and others will do it differently.
So my last question for Rod is, how will you ensure that the responses that Cheryl is expecting are going to get to her in a timely fashion, especially given the changes that are going on in the town manager's office?
The instructions are in the RFP that the RFP is to be responded to at the lister's email address.
Okay, good.
And I'm hoping that come the deadline that there's still communication between the town manager's office with Miranda in it and the listers in their office as well.
Okay. So may I call the question?
Yes, please.
Okay. I don't have the motion in front of me, but please.
Want me to repeat it? I can.
Third time.
Okay, sure. It'll probably be slightly different each time. So I move to approve the RFP and authorize and ask the town manager's office to release it following amendments according to Form 411.
We have a second from Mary. So all in favor?
Okay.
All right, unanimous. Okay. Then was there a second motion?
There is a second one.
Would you like to read it?
Yes. I move to approve the establishment of a panel supported by the town assessor, comprising the listers, one select board member, one member of the Board of Civil Authority, and one member of the public to review any responses received to the RFP.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Rob. Any discussion? All right. Roger?
I'll just really quickly say, I mean, I think this is, in many ways a good thing, right? We don't have a full board of listers. I think it could possibly be a way to engage them in the work itself. And we know that the BCA is instrumentally involved in hearing appeals. And so this is another way to more meaningfully involve them in this work, right? And so I think like more voices looking at the criteria will suit the town. And as that's been previously established, this is often a recommendation sometimes with RFPs. So that's just quickly. Thanks.
Okay. Cheryl Lindbergh, you have a comment, question?
It strikes me that this is burdensome, that we as the Board of Listers would be the ones to make a solid recommendation to the Select Board without the addition of others. A lot of times, again, we're going to be having people on a committee that does not understand the importance of the work that gets done in the office. It's just an unfortunate layer that I'm surprised again to hear about this at a Select Board meeting for the first time, not being approached as a Board of Lister elected official ahead of time to discuss such matters.
Thank you, Cheryl. I think that resonates with me. I'm going to call the question and do a roll call. Mary, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Roger, how do you vote?
Yes.
Bob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Aaron, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And Marcia votes no. Thank you. All right, I think the next thing on the agenda is number 6. It says the appointment of Layton and Arnold to collective bargaining committee. Hello.
Sorry, Marcia, you've missed a step, I'm afraid.
Oh, wait, there was a third call, yes.
Third part, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I missed it too. Shall I
Okay.
move the third part?
Yes, please.
Madam Chair? I move that the select board solicit applications from members of the public to join the panel, select a member of the select board to sit on the panel, and to invite the Board of Civil Authority to nominate a member to the panel.
Is there a second to the motion? Aaron seconds the motion. Any discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. And roll call vote. Mary?
I vote yes.
Roger, how do you vote?
Yes.
Rob, how do you vote?
Yes.
Aaron, how do you vote?
Yes.
Marcia votes no. Motion passes. Okay. That is it, correct?
Yep.
We're now at number 6, appoint Layton and Arnold to collective bargaining committee. Who would like to speak to this?
I can. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Roger.
Roger, go ahead.
Well, probably Mary and I might have said the same thing. So just really quickly, the town manager has done these duties, right? And so in not having that, where board members will instead serve in this core duty in the absence of one, right? And then the presumptiveness of it, right? Why it says Arnold and Layton is simply because collective bargaining is likely slated to be after March, right? And Mary and I will still be here. Our terms are not up, and everybody else will, faces re-election. And so that is sort of the reason for its presumptiveness. And then I will say too, that really quickly, that these negotiations will have to be warned meetings, but will likely be immediately go into executive. And we will be working with the legal team on it. Did I get everything right, Mary? Sorry.
Yes, that sounds like it covers it.
Sorry, bad habits. I'm learning.
Okay. And you think that 2 people are required for this?
I think yes, I think so. I think it's for the benefit of having a more diversity of thought. It was an ask of the attorney, quite frankly. I didn't think to question why 2 were valued. I will say if the board would like more updates along the way, that is something of the process. That is something that you can certainly ask for, Marcia. It was maybe something we wanted more of in the last process. And as I referenced, these ultimately will be closed door meetings because of the nature of personnel.
I think that would be a good thing for the board to keep apprised of it. Are there any other comments by the board? If not, there's a public comment. Whoever is 847, would you like to make your public comment?
Hi, that's
Linda.
me, Linda Cook. I'm hearing it said that there won't be a town manager around. The concern I have is that we need to operate as a town manager. We cannot go to select board operation because we voted to do it as a town manager. There is a service out there the town used before called Municipal Resource Inc. out of New Hampshire that has retired town managers that I don't know exactly what the contract was when it was done, but there's a service that when Rod steps down, there needs to be a person in place acting as our town manager. If I'm incorrect, I can't quote the statute at this time, but if I'm incorrect, if somebody else can add any other information on that, or if the board would like to look into that.
Thank you. I think that's going to have to be a future agenda item pretty quickly. So thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
Okay. So there's a motion on the table and it has been seconded. Shall I call the question?
Was there a motion?
I don't think there was a motion.
Oh, I thought there was a motion.
Let's see. Check
Ahead
with
of
Mark.
myself.
Yeah.
Okay. Just to that point, having two people from the board elected to this committee, is it possible, if we wanted to revert to the new town manager to take that position, or will the board members stay with this process to conclusion?
I think there would always, sorry.
Roger, please.
So I imagine there was always a space for some select board representation in the conversations. I think it would lessen the burden and need for two if a town manager were to be hired or to step in. And then ultimately, we rely on legal counsel to guide us through this process. And so even the onboarding would be done through our firm. I think that's safe to say. You might want to ask Rod, who has been working with the attorneys.
He's nodding. Okay. Manu, I'd like to recognize you. Do you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. Manu Tassone, 428 Hawk Pine. Quick question for the board. I hear that Roger Arnold just mentioned legal counsel will be there for support. As far as I'm concerned, neither Roger nor Mary have experience negotiating collective bargaining agreements. What kind of commercial support is there available to the board when it comes to negotiating such a critical contract? Thank you.
Thank you, Manu. I think, Mary, do you want to answer that?
I just like a clarification from Manu. What commercial advisement or support? What does he mean? I don't quite understand it.
Manu, do I take it that you mean legal advice?
Maybe the board can clarify to the general public what this collective bargaining agreement will include. I assume it will include compensation for union employees and other benefits. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. I believe that is correct. Yes.
Correct. And so that's why I'm asking what kind of support, for example, gathering of market data and other statistics that will allow our town to negotiate with union representatives when it comes to setting compensation for union employees, and which 80% of our town budget is people when we're fully staffed. So I think this is a pretty critical matter. So I've heard there's legal counsel for support. I'm wondering what kind of commercial support is the board, does the board have access to?
Thank you, Manu. That's a good question. Does one of the board members have historical background on what we have used in the past? Roger?
I think, Marcia, you might, if I may, ask Rod to elucidate further the expertise and the scope for legal counsel, because we, in fact, chose this firm in part because of their ability to their skills in labor and employment law.
Rod, do you want to answer that? Manu's question?
I can certainly try. So thank you for recognizing me, Marcia. So part of the process of developing the RFQ for legal services, for labor negotiations, and including the collective bargaining agreement, was to select a firm of lawyers that have got background and experience representing municipalities before the Vermont Labor Board and developing and negotiating collective bargaining agreements. And the firm that was selected has got deep experience in this regard, including being able to access the economic analysis I believe that Manu Tassone is referencing. And so as part of the process of me onboarding the new legal team for the collective bargaining agreement, We had a discussion about Norwich's history with the current collective bargaining agreement and how to actually determine the significance of the regional labour market versus the overall state labour market, and then how to actually identify peer towns. And so we had a fairly lengthy and somewhat intellectual discussion about this. And one of the most valuable measures that's an easy measure in some ways to gather is the grand list value of a town. And so it may come as a bit of a surprise to people in the audience right now, but the grand list value of Norwich is around about the same as Montpelier, Vermont. Now, obviously, Montpelier and Norwich don't have very much in common, and there are some idiosyncrasies in there that need to be teased out. On the other hand, we have a similar grand list to Wilmington, which arguably has more things in common. So there are factors and features which help you explain where a town is in terms of its market and its labor market, and variation, and some analysis needs to be done as to what the prevailing wage rates are, and how you would go about determining what they are. We've gathered informal information about including the collective bargaining agreements from surrounding towns, and got them from further away. So to cut to this chase, the attorney, John Klesch, is very used to putting together collective bargaining agreements and arguing them and negotiating them, and is comfortable with the idea of being able to establish what prevailing wage rates are. I should also say that the other side of the table, the union, is also going to rely on similar kind of information, and that's precisely the purpose of the collective bargaining agreement. The role of the select board on the team is to think about where the town is at, think about the political and social circumstances of the town, advise the attorney, receive advice from the attorney in terms of strategy and tactics and what the information is, and then move towards, hopefully, a brisk solution and a new collective bargaining agreement that represents the best interests of the town and supports the workers.
Thank you, Rod. If there are no more discussion points from the board, Stuart Richards has a comment.
Stuart Richards, member, Board of Civil Authority. I don't know. There's a great deal of information available on what market rates are for various positions. It's available through the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. They update it every year. And that's a valuable tool in determining what the labor rates are, to determine where we ought to be for the various positions that we want to be hiring for and that we want to be negotiating for. So I certainly would appreciate whoever's going to be involved in this to get a copy of the current edition from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns for all of the wage rates that are currently available. When the question was asked via the public records request, the answer was that there was no information available currently from the town. So although that was the answer then, I think it's important that we get current market rates for all of these labor positions that we're going to be negotiating on, and it's readily available. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Stuart. Duly noted, Roger and Mary, for your work.
Oh,
shall we call the question? Oh, sorry, Mary.
Do we have a motion yet? I don't
We
think
have
so.
a motion and we have a second. So shall we call the question?
Who moved? Could you say again who moved and who seconded? Sorry. I don't think we have one.
Oh, I may have dreamt it. I thought Roger did. Would someone like to make a motion?
Well, I'll do it.
Since Mary and Roger are running, would
someone else do it?
Rob or Aaron like to do it?
Yeah, I'll do it. I just have to, let me find a document.
I have it. I have it here if you don't have it yet.
Go ahead, Rob.
Okay. I move to appoint Mary Layton and Roger Arnold to the Collective Bargaining Committee.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you,
I'll second.
Aaron. Aaron has seconded it. I'll call the question. Mary, how do you vote? Yes.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Roger, how do you vote?
Yes.
Robert, how do you vote?
Yes.
Aaron, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Marcia votes yes.
Okay.
Unanimous. All right. Now we're on number 7. We're a little bit late, but we will move along. Response to alleged violation of open meeting law. Is there a motion?
Yeah. Would you like me to? Okay. There are two parts. I move to find that premature general public knowledge of communications with legal counsel would clearly place the select board at a substantial disadvantage because it would waive attorney-client privilege covering confidential legal opinion and advice concerning a response to the notice of violation sent to the select board on October 17th, 2022.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rob. Any discussion? Okay. Can we vote?
You want to do all in favor?
Show of hands. Show of hands.
For yes? Yeah.
For yes.
Okay.
Unanimous. Mary, is there a second part?
There's a second part. I move to enter into executive session pursuant to 1 VSA section 313A1F to consider confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the select board and invite legal counsel to join the select board in the executive session pursuant to 1 VSA section 313B.
Thank you. Is there a second?
If
Roger?
If I may, I don't know if was the town manager in the motion.
No.
No. Is that important?
Do we want the
Probably
benefit?
not required.
Okay. I'm asking if we would like the benefit of presence, but sorry, Mary made a motion. I'll second it.
Okay. Call the question. Show of hands for support. Thank you. Motion passes. Would you like to move us into executive session, Roger, at 8:06 p.m.?
Recording stopped.
Did we do the motion to go into public session?
I'm putting folks in the waiting room now, Marcia, because we're not all done. Is that what you were asking?
I was reading the third one. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I see a show of hands for going into public session. Unanimous? 8:43, we're in public session.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have any motion to be made? Mary?
Yes. On October 17th, 2022, the Select Board received a notice alleging violation of the open meeting law. After due deliberation, I move that the Select Board deny the notice of violation.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Rob. All in favor? Unanimous? Thank you. All right, now we'll move on to the consent agenda. First thing is the AP warrant. Any discussion? Any concerns? All right. 1 second. I've lost my list.
The meeting
nothing.
minutes. Well,
Yes, Mary?
I'm sorry. Under the consent agenda, we had consider the AP warrant, approve draft meeting minutes for 10/12 and 10/18, and correspondence. Those are the three components.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone want to bring any of those forward? No? Any public comment? Can we have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Seconded by Rob. Can I call the question? All in favor? Unanimous? All right. Future agenda items, please. All right. So going forward, we have a lot of old issues and we have a budget coming up. So I'm open to suggestions. What do people have on their minds for future agenda items? Mary.
My top two are moving quickly to try to find an interim town manager. It'll be called Municipal Resources Inc. and or VLCT to start off. And then just that that I think the budget process that the departments are going to need to submit their budgets. I don't know if that's been initiated. So I would like to know about that and to know what kind of role we're going to have to play in that. And then the third thing is to think about identifying the from the town manager as part of his separation from the town, just to get a list of priorities, sort of his to-do list.
Okay. Roger, were you next?
I think so. Just as something, I think we obviously all know that the separation agreement has a designated board member, which I believe is Aaron, participating in the handoff. So my understanding of my read of that agreement is that there would be a document prepared to guide the conversation, and that we will be receiving essentially a draft of the budget that exists, but updated to current facts on the ground. So I might suggest as a future agenda item, like having sort of a download from Aaron of that document, and then coinciding with someone preparing a budget schedule. So obviously the documents will have a mechanism for engaging with department heads. And so it'll just be a question of how we work through the budget. Last year, the schedule had us meeting with the department and then following up with that same department the next subsequent meeting, which I thought was effective. Usually we heard presentations and then we all, talked at the end. So anyway, I'll step back, but just to say that someone should think about the budget process coinciding with that handoff from Rod.
Thank you. Anyone else? Rob?
Muted. Rob, you're muted.
I think we have to build into the budgeting process the discussion and method by which we're going to decide what we do with the ARPA funds and other state and federal sources of money, as there are essentially some time limits, and some of these discussions might affect our budgeting.
Thank you. Good point. Aaron?
Just that Rod and I had a brief discussion about scheduling. I don't know if I've updated that thought any, Rod, but as it stands, we wouldn't be ready for the first Wednesday of November, but do you want to change that? Go ahead, Rod.
Is he muted?
Hi, yeah, Aaron. So I think the first meeting in November is November 7th. Is that correct? No.
2nd. I think it's Wednesday the 2nd.
9th.
That's why I was just glancing at the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
If the first Wednesday in November is the 2nd is the 9th. Right. I don't know how we do it.
Either way.
2nd and 4th?
Before we get to that, I'm sure people in the audience are confused about what you're talking about. So, Aaron, would you please explain what you're talking about?
Well, Roger just said, I'm designated select board member to meet with Rod to go through a document that Rod will prepare to transmit current status of current town issues to us for transfer to the next interim or hired town manager, whatever is next. So we were briefly talked the other day about a schedule that looked like it was going to be maybe after Rod's last day, which is the 7th. So it wouldn't be ready for the meeting of the 9th. So I think we should proceed apace with whatever we need to proceed with, not waiting for this transfer process to be reported on before we get on with any other business. So anything that needs is a high priority time-wise, we should jumpstart the process on making sure we're up to date on the status. That's kind of where I'm at right now. It's going to be the second meeting in November, probably for a report from me, is what I'm saying.
So essentially,
go ahead.
Rod was going to just communicate with you to avoid communicating with a whole bunch of with everybody individually or whatever.
Piecemeal, right. There'll be a document and there'll be a set of meetings. I think that the agreement says 3 90-minute meetings, and between me and Rod, and I will take notes, hopefully successfully, but the document will drive the conversation. So, and then I will be able to report on those meetings as we go forward with running the town. Hopefully that promptly we will have an interim town manager to transfer that to, but however long that takes. So you'll be a conduit, and you'll be on the agenda to present that a conduit. Right, but it will be the second. And my point is, it'll be the second meeting of November.
Okay, and Roger, you had a comment?
Right. I think we can't lose sight of the public actions we took on September 14th, right? So one of which was to continue to identify and work with an HR consultant, and then also to continue to understand how to improve relationships between paid staff and elected officials. It's clear to me that we should move towards mediation with that work. If we're going to do anything relating to an RFP process for identifying a firm for the next town manager, these public actions that we took on September 14th need to be actively worked on, or engaged as part of, or the bid needs to make that those actions are being continually developed. Does that make sense?
Not really.
We need to continue we took public action on September 14th following the confidential presentation from our independent investigator, and we need to continue to actually do that work, as difficult as it might be in this moment, because that's the only way that successful management will be in place in the town of Norwich.
So perhaps it would be apropos to research some more human resources firms. I did have a suggestion of one the other day.
that would be in my proposal that we have follow up to these public actions. We gave ourselves some time. We gave ourselves the assumption of the budget process. I think to maybe Rob's point. So that's all. I don't know how we would work through the vagaries of sorting those big, heavy public actions out, but we need to.
Well, unfortunately, I think we need to move, across the board on a lot of issues at the same time, and we can do that. Rod, go ahead and offer your comment. You're on mute.
I have a very simple one, which is that November the 23rd is the second select board meeting in November, and it is also the night before Thanksgiving, Thursday. So I don't know what the tradition is in Norwich. I don't know whether you're stoic and you on the night before Thanksgiving, or whether you bend to family pressure and don't do it, in which case you should find a different date to meet on. And maybe that's a discussion point you can have now or resolve offline. But
that's a good point.
And to clarify, I just support what Aaron's recollection of our conversation is exactly the same as mine, that we will be meeting towards the end of the week of November the 7th. And so the material won't be ready for distribution or passing on until after your first meeting in November. So I just wanted to draw your attention to the calendar conflict potentially.
Thank you. I'm going to make an unpopular suggestion that we actually meet 3 times in November, especially given what we've got going on with the listers. And that would be the 2nd, the 16th, and the 30th, which would leave Thanksgiving vacation or Thanksgiving free, and might help us catch up with a few things. Roger?
Sorry, I heard a crash. I think also we're talking about government operations. We're assuming that the Tracy Hall boilers will last. I have no idea how much of that is true, or could or how much we need to understand how operations are going to function in that building if we don't have a way to heat that building.
Or to have a backup plan or something.
Aaron?
Yeah, I'm responding. I am also thinking about Tracy Hall. There's the question of there's also it reminds me of the question of when we start meeting publicly again, where we're going to do that, because Tracy Hall is not adequate ventilation wise, and of course there's the heat question. So that's a factor. We have to have a public meeting space starting in January. So I think that's something we need to figure out.
Okay. My concerns, I think urgently, we're getting to the end of the season, but the Guile Mountain situation needs to be addressed. And maybe we need to have something from the new police chief to find out what the plan is, but we've got to do something to avoid a problem up there. I'm also going to be looking for ongoing information about the Moore Lane Bridge issue, because I think we are far from resolved with that. The personnel policies, I think, are huge, and they blend into what Roger was talking about, the September 14th business. I'm thinking that it might help us in terms of our budget situation if we reinstated the finance committee with some qualified resident volunteers. We have people who, were doing that work, and I think it could be helpful. So I'd like to think about that. Ongoing, I think we need to finish the master financial policies. We were going apace with those, and I don't see why we can't finish them. And I've been very frustrated that we haven't actually got a dog policy. And again, here we are, it's almost snow time, but I do think we probably need to look at that. So we've got a full agenda, but I think what I'd like to do is prioritize things in my own mind and send it out to all of you by way of agenda setting, so that we can begin to craft together when we're going to look at things. And then we can pull together the information that we need with a little advance notice to whomever needs to get it for us, so that we can have some really full discussions. Aaron, do you have a question, comment?
Well, that reminds me that one of the things I looked for and didn't find when I was appointed to the select board was a calendar. That exactly what you're saying. It's laying out the things that we know we're going to talk about over the meetings we know we're going to have, right, say from March to March. And I think that would be an excellent thing to work on. Obviously, you have to leave space for what comes up and all of that. But I think a calendar like that was, highly visible on the webpage for the public as well as us would really help set the context for the select board's work.
Right. I think so too. Roger? So,
Marsha, I don't mean at all to push back. And thank you for taking on this role. I really, I'm really grateful for that. I think we all are. But I think we're losing real sight of the polemic that, that we're dealing with here. The only thing that we should be supporting is town staff around whatever is happening right now, which means the preparation of the annual report, which means the AP warrant, right? And making sure that the building itself is safe, ventilated, and heated. And that, and that is really it. And the only meetings that we should be convening are ones that are relating to the budget and then supporting hearing updates on the town report and AP warrants and just general, hopefully generally positive interactions within the building. It's also very clear that Miranda will be fielding phone calls, and there needs to be a mechanism established between probably you and her for, receiving messages. And so I would say that the next message really needs to be a conversation about, operations, because in the absence of getting an interim, which I don't think we will be able to find, I hope that's not the case. Hartford is also looking, maybe we can be collaborative, where we're going to be supporting operations. And I don't pine for the days where we don't have a town manager form of government. Right. So I know that we all know that, but we need to there's no dog ordinance right now. There's no God right now. I know, but I'm a great believer in having things on the docket. And if you have 2 seconds of time, somebody can put in some work on something. And I think the board has to take a position that we're looking out for every part of this town, and we're working with staff to make sure that we get things done. And obviously there's, triage that has to go on, but I want this on some sort of a docket so that we have a good idea and that people understand if there's any time we've got to put our shoulders to the wheel and everybody's got to do this. Okay. And Aaron.
Yeah, I think that's totally appropriate. And the way I would propose that we do that is something like the dog ordinance that we maybe don't see ourselves really getting down to before March. You put it on the proposed 22 or 23, 24 select board calendar that we will then build out when that time comes with that new select board. So, but that doesn't get lost. It's there on that document ready. So everyone knows that select board, the dog ordinance is going to be a 23, 24 project or whatever it is. And that way there is a place to go to say, what is the select board planning to work on? When are they planning to work on it? Even if it's far out. And Roger, you're totally right. We have a crisis. We have to deal with the things that actually need to be dealt with, but it is useful to keep those things in mind so that you have the town as well as we have a place to say, right, we were talking about the dog ordinance. We're going to talk about that in a year. We can not think about it now. So I support that document existing or making it. I think that's useful.
And I'm going to be calling on all of you to help with that.
Oh, no, I don't support that.
Sorry, you signed up. You're in. No. All right. Do we have any? So I'm going to put together sort of a triage, understanding what we've got to do right in front of us. I'm going to work with Miranda to make sure that we've got a good system of communication. And I'm going to, in the context of agenda setting, be talking to all of you about how and when we're doing stuff. Okay. Mary.
Okay.
I think that sounds fine. Should we decide tonight about the dates in November since it's coming at us?
I think we should. So I'm mindful of what Cheryl was talking about in terms of her timing, and we've got to move on these things. So does anyone have, I mean, we've been meeting a lot lately with special board meetings, et cetera, and we're all tired. I know that, and it's only going to get worse. But if we put in the time in November, it might actually help us in December. Okay. Does anybody have any strong feelings against having meetings on the 2nd, the 16th, and the 30th? Other than the obvious ones.
Yeah.
What was it due to December? Let's see. We may get slammed in December.
Well, there would be the 14th and the 28th, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yep. As far as the week of Thanksgiving, the Tuesday wouldn't be acceptable? The 22nd?
We could, but we've got to fit in sometime between November 28th and December 9th to meet. And so that means it's going to have
December 7th. No,
right. That's right, the 7th.
7th. Well, I think we're going to be meeting a lot just to get stuff done. So I guess I would.
I'm not sure the 30th is going to be. Isn't that too? I'm not going to be ready to make it a. We're going to have a recommendation on the RFP by the 30th, are we? Seems unlikely. Since the end of the RFP period is, I think, the 29th. Isn't it? I think
28th.
I asked Cheryl. She said after the 28th and before the 9th.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to give them a little time to actually chew through whatever, make a decision. But it's a body, not a person. So they have to have meet and they have to debate. So I think we shouldn't think of the second or whatever date it was. I mean, the 30th as a date that we're going to somehow address the RFP. I think that if we're thinking about the RFP, we're going to be meeting closer to December 7th for that. So I would say, why not do 2 meetings in November and expect a special meeting early in December to deal with, and that would be 3 meetings, an extra meeting in this period, but it would actually address the question of answering the RFP or selecting from the RFP.
So that would be the 9th and 22nd, potentially the Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
Right, and then the 6th or so the 5th or something.
The 7th is a Wednesday in December.
I don't know do we want to give ourselves an extra couple of days in case? I mean, I have no idea, but yeah, sometime in that week.
I think we should just put together a budget schedule.
Well, we're going to do that too, but so does everybody agree on the 9th?
Rod has his hand up. Can we hear from Rod before he's got something to say about it?
We may hear from Rod. Go ahead, Rod.
Hi, I actually had the original due by date for the RFP as November the 21st, and I was conflicted on settling on that date. It was Cheryl and Pam that suggested the 28th, which is after Thanksgiving. I was opting for Thanksgiving. There's some pros and cons to both those dates. The pro with the 21st is it gives the panel the time to form, and then a fairly icky Thanksgiving where you're going to look at, I don't think you're going to get more than 3 or 4 RFPs, so it's not going to be that arduous. But then you could make a decision immediately on the other side of Thanksgiving. And then you've got a chance to put the plan in on December the 9th, but you'd have to schedule some extra meetings immediately after Thanksgiving. But you get that panel together and they can do it. They can be reviewing the RFPs individually and come together immediately after Thanksgiving. The downside of having the 21st be the due date is it doesn't give the respondents very long to pull this thing together. But, they're all vendors. They're all doing this all the time. I hate to break it to you, but they're going to pull a template off their hard drive they're going to change the name of the town, they're going to change the dates, they're going to change the price, and then they're going to put it in. It shouldn't take them more than 2.5 hours to do it. So that's the way consultants go. Don't ask me why, I know. And then, you'll have them by the 21st. But it was Cheryl and Pam that were going for the date of the 28th, and I'm not entirely sure why. I would recommend sticking with the 21st and then getting your ducks in a row so that you can review them over Thanksgiving and make a snap decision on the other side.
Roger?
The motion that we passed had the 21st because the only amendment was the 411 material. So we have that date. So I think the future agenda item is just to establish the committee and solicit applications before it advances that 21st deadline. That's the agenda item.
So that should be our first meeting in November, I would think. Well, it has to be.
You mean the 9th?
Yeah, the 9th, if we're agreeing on that, the 9th.
So the 9th is our first meeting. And then for the week of Thanksgiving, do you want to meet on the Tuesday as opposed to the Wednesday?
Yes, I think that's better.
It's preferable, yeah.
All right. Yeah. So November meetings will be the 9th and the 22nd. And then we will plan on the first full week in December.
The 7th, yeah.
Well, it could be the 7th or it could be the 6th. Aaron had suggested giving a couple of extra days. So the 6th would be a Tuesday.
Keep it open, right? 6 or
7.
Yeah.
6 works for me. I don't.
6 is fine for me, actually. That's a Tuesday, right?
Yes. Roger, Rob?
I'm flexible. So right. Tuesday's fine.
Let's say the 6th, and that gives us a little bit of time. Not much, but a little. Okay. All right. One thing I had meant to pull up, there was a letter from Doug Wilberding about a particular type of heating for Tracy Hall. Is that something, in terms of putting an agenda item together, is that something that we want to have considered? Aaron?
I assume he was talking about wood pellet or something along those lines, and I would be quite strenuously opposed.
It was bio something. So
yeah, well, yeah,
wood pellets. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Tech speak.
Okay. It's time for public participation, I think, unless anybody has anything further to say for future agenda items. No? Okay. Invitation to the public. Does anyone have anything that they want to say, add, opine about? Seeing no hands.
There are hands.
Oh, no. Pam, Stuart, and Cheryl.
Lots of hands. Okay, here we are. Stuart, go ahead.
So there have been quite a few requests to try and transform what's been going on and take advantage of transparency. And the question that I have, which I hope you'll be able to answer, is will the public be able to ask questions and get answers to the extent that somebody on the select board knows the answer or can get the answer? Is that something that's going to happen? Or is the current procedure as dictated by Mr. Arnold, is that going to continue where people are allowed to speak, but there are no answers?
Thank you, Stuart. I think what we need to do is figure out a way to provide answers that are answerable. And this may help if we are meeting in public. And I think we need to sort of start to address that. And it looks like, we're talking about the space, the meeting, how we're going to get ready for that. And then I think the board needs to talk about how we're going to answer questions, because obviously some questions are answerable and some questions are not answerable just because of either we don't know the answer or it was done in executive session and we can't disclose that. So the short answer is I would like to see you get answers. I'd like to see everybody to get answers and for us to start healing this community. And Roger, do you have a comment?
Yes, it's a violation of the open meeting law to discuss items that are not on the agenda. And so when people have questions, we often say that it would have to be a consideration for a future agenda item because it's a violation of law to show up and just discuss something that hasn't been part of a warned meeting. So, we meet and exceed the standards of our work. And so, and I know that you know that. So we'll have to figure out a way forward.
Maybe what we can do, just a second, Stuart, maybe what we can do is identify questions that we're going to answer in the next meeting and answer them so that they're on the agenda. Okay. Stuart, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, please. So what I wanted to say was that it's possible to have an agenda item for a question and answer session. And I think that would meet the standard that we have to live by. And I don't know why that hasn't happened in the last couple of years. So I think it's reasonable. First of all, there are many questions that are out there, and it shouldn't be necessary to have a public records request in order to get them answered. If you continue to maintain the posture that you've had, there'll be more public records requests that will consume more time than answering questions in a public meeting. So I see Roger shaking his head. He doesn't agree with me. He would rather keep things non-transparent, and that's not the way I would like to see this proceed.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. We'll work on this. Aaron.
I don't know whether it is statutory to have a question and answer period within a warned meeting where anything might be discussed that is not warned. But if it is, I am willing to entertain the idea that we might start every meeting or every regular meeting maybe with some sort of a short question and answer period that was highly moderated and was cut off at 15 or 20 minutes or whatever it was. And then that was the public discussion other than invited by the select board for the rest of the evening so we could get on with our work. Because all of this everyone sitting through the meeting, trying to fit their public comment into whatever, it takes a lot of time, and it's causing us to have difficulty, having substantive discussions and getting on with our work. So I think I'd be willing to consider trying that. And coming up with a way to moderate it hard, so that it wasn't always the same questions from the same voices and things like that and there would be rules and we would try to follow them. And if it fell apart and didn't work, we wouldn't keep doing it. But that's an idea I've thought about. And it's conceivable to me that it would actually, as Stuart suggests, calm some of the concern from the public. They would have a place to go to ask a question and get some sort of an answer. Now that obviously we wouldn't be able to answer as a board because we wouldn't discuss everything, couldn't have any way to discuss our answers. So they would have to be as best we could almost as individuals rather than as officials. I don't know how that would work. It's a very difficult question, but I'd be willing to entertain it.
Thank you, Aaron, for at least attempting to try.
I will put some ideas together for agenda setting. Okay. Pam Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Marcia. I just wanted to address the issue of the deadline of November 21st as the deadline for submission of the RFP responses. The reason that the listers changed that date was our assumption that the listers were going to be the entity to receive those responses. For the first time in 20 years, my daughter will be with us the week of Thanksgiving. And so I am not available at all during that week and into the following week because of her visit. I'm not willing to put my elected official role ahead of being a mother. So I'm not clear on who's going to receive the response is on November 21st, but I can tell you that I'm just not available that day. So I guess that's something that has to be worked out, but I will be absent from that process. Thank you.
I think I heard that the responses are going to the lister's email.
But they also need to be responded to and received, and you have a deadline of 10 a.m. and no responses after 10 a.m. will be accepted. And so if somebody were to walk in the office at 11:10 in the or 10:10 in the morning and say, here's my written proposal, they would be beyond the deadline. I'm not sure who's going to be the traffic cop on that particular issue. So I'm just letting you know that because of family obligations, it will not be me that week.
Understood. Cheryl? You're there.
Yeah. Okay. Are you asking me a question, or are you just letting me give a public comment? I wasn't sure.
Your hand was up, so I'm calling.
Yeah, okay. So I've been curious. Reporting of FY23 information has not occurred yet this year, and we are more than a quarter into our fiscal year without any financial reporting being available, which is in the policy as the second meeting of the month for the prior month's financials. So I'm wondering when that will be starting to happen. It'll be available to all the departments.
Thank you. Anybody have an answer? Roger, your hand is up.
Yeah, my understanding is we had a reporting at the end of the fiscal year closeout, and we had a conversation, right, about the general ledger, right, making sure that we were using the availability of funds in the operating budget, right, and then we remember that discussion. Rod's nodding, so we had a discussion of the financial closeout to the extent of what and the board received that report from our finance director to the extent that there were documents produced to support the work of other departments. I can't speak to, but I certainly remember.
I'm talking about this fiscal year we're in right now, July 1st to October 31st.
So one is due.
Like a quarterly report.
Rod, what do you have to offer?
Yeah, we've been working, as you know, Joyce Hasbrook has just joined us recently, and we have compiled information that it will be ready for the next packet. And then on the point of just to follow up while I've got the mic, the way the RFP is written is that the respondents respond by email only. And so the email can be monitored remotely. And there is no physical document that will be submitted. There is no physical location offered. The only way to submit the RFPs is via email. And so it's just a matter of monitoring the email, having a pre-prepared message that goes out acknowledging receipt of the email, and then being able to answer any questions subsequent, along the way before the due date. So there is no physical presence required, or traffic cop role, as Pam pointed out. This can all be done fairly easily by a staff person monitoring the lister's email address, or one of the listers being able to do it. If the listers are not able to do that, then I would argue that the appropriate email address would be Miranda Bergmeyer from the town manager's office.
Cheryl Lindbergh, can you tell us if that can be?
I can handle that. I can handle it. I'll be available on that day.
Thank you. Okay. Manu, you have a comment?
Thank you. Manu Tassone for 28 Hawkpine. The town's master financial policies are very clear. I wonder why, if we had a finance director up to 2 weeks ago, we have those policies were not followed, and we haven't received, as part of the package, the current financial year, any updated financial information.
Rod, would you like to answer that?
Just that there was a transition from the old finance director to the new finance director. A lot of onboarding that needed to happen along with payroll and AP. And it's ready. It's basically ready to go now. It'll be in the next packet.
Is there any problem with sharing that earlier than the packet?
I can't answer that for you right now. I think the safest place to put it is the next packet, but because if you've got it's the appropriate place to put it.
Well, if it's available, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to allowing people to have access to it if they need it. Okay, that's one person's opinion. Anybody else have any comments? Anybody see any hands? I don't. All right.
I don't know if Manu's hand is still up or if it's a carryover.
No, it's a new comment.
It's a what?
I'd like to make a new comment, if that's okay, Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
I just would like to thank you, Madam Chair, for the way you have managed today's meeting. I can sense from the way you've run the meeting that we are looking at a very substantial change in the way the Select Board is likely to be managed over the next few months. And so I'd like to thank you for that and for clearly being open to public comments and welcoming public participation. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We're all in this together. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Rob Gear. All in favor? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Right.
Record.